Did you know that the simple act of walking on your local pavement could soon become completely different, and councils across the UK are admitting they have no choice but to make radical changes? Thousands of residents are already being caught off guard by new enforcement measures, and if you don't understand what's happening right now, you could face unexpected fines or find yourself in serious trouble. Stay with me because what I'm about to reveal will change the way you think about your daily walk forever. Welcome to UK State Pension with David. I'm David, and if you're new here, this channel is all about keeping you informed on the issues that matter most to people across the United Kingdom, from pensions to local council policies that affect your everyday life. Today, we're diving into something that's causing absolute chaos in communities nationwide. Councils are rolling out shocking new pavement rules, and they're saying they have no choice but to implement these changes. Whether you're a pedestrian, a driver, a business owner, or simply someone who cares about your local area, this affects you directly. Let me start by explaining exactly what's happening and why councils are using such strong language. Across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland, local authorities are being forced to completely rethink how pavements are managed, enforced, and even designed. The pressure is coming from multiple directions. We're seeing record numbers of personal injury claims related to pavement defects, mounting accessibility complaints from disability rights groups, new legal obligations under updated highway codes, and frankly, decades of underinvestment catching up with local authorities all at once. The phrase, "we must change," isn't just dramatic language from council press officers. It's a genuine acknowledgement that the current system is broken beyond repair. Let me paint you a picture of what's actually happening on the ground. In Birmingham, the council faced over 300 pavement-related injury claims last year alone, costing taxpayers millions in compensation. In Edinburgh, disability campaigners successfully argued that cracked and uneven pavements violate the Equality Act, forcing immediate action. In Cardiff, a pensioner's fall on a broken paving stone resulted in a six-figure settlement that made headlines across Wales. These aren't isolated incidents anymore. They're becoming the norm, and councils are terrified. So what exactly are these new rules that councils are implementing? First and foremost, there's a massive crackdown on pavement parking. Now, I know this has been a contentious issue for years, but what's different now is the scale and severity of enforcement. The Transport Scotland Act already banned pavement parking across Scotland, with fines of £100 for violations. England and Wales are rapidly moving in the same direction, with London boroughs leading the charge. What used to be tolerated or ignored is now being actively enforced with penalty charge notices, vehicle removal, and in some cases, criminal proceedings for repeat offenders. But here's where it gets really interesting, and this is something most people haven't fully grasped yet. The new rules aren't just about parking, they're about how pavements are used entirely. Councils are now defining exactly what constitutes obstruction, and the definitions are much broader than you might think. We're talking about everything from wheelie bins left on pavements beyond collection times to advertising boards placed outside shops, from overgrown hedges encroaching onto walkways to scaffolding that doesn't meet new clearance requirements. Estate agents' signs, tables and chairs from cafes, even children's toys left outside homes are all coming under scrutiny. Let me tell you about a case that shocked many people in Manchester. A small business owner received a formal warning and then a fine for placing a sandwich board on the pavement outside his cafe, something he'd done for 15 years without issue. When he complained, the council explained that under their new pavement strategy, any obstruction that reduces the clear walking width below 2 meters is now prohibited. The business owner argued that his board was only 30 centimeters wide and nobody had ever complained. The council's response was simple. The law doesn't require complaints, it requires compliance. This brings us to one of the most controversial aspects of the new rules, the required clearance widths. Councils are now mandating that pavements must maintain a minimum clear width to accommodate wheelchair users, people with pushchairs, and those using mobility aids. On paper, this sounds entirely reasonable and is long overdue. In practice, it's creating enormous headaches. Many Victorian-era streets have pavements that were never designed with these widths in mind. Homeowners who've had the same fence or wall for decades are suddenly being told it encroaches on public space and must be moved back. Shop owners are being instructed to remove displays that have been part of the streetscape for generations. The financial implications are staggering. Councils estimate they need to spend billions collectively to bring pavements up to the new standards. We're not talking about simple repairs here. We're talking about complete redesigns of street layouts, widening pavements where possible, installing proper dropped curbs at every crossing point, ensuring tactile paving for visually impaired pedestrians, and upgrading drainage to prevent pooling that makes pavements impassable. The money simply isn't there in most council budgets, which is why many are turning to aggressive enforcement of pavement violations as a revenue stream. Here's something that's causing particular anger among residents. Councils are implementing what they call a hierarchy of enforcement. Essentially, they're prioritizing certain violations over others, and the priorities don't always align with what common sense would suggest. For example, in some areas, councils are focusing heavily on parked vehicles blocking pavements, but doing little about actual pavement maintenance. Residents are rightly asking why they're being fined for parking partially on a crumbling pavement that the council itself has failed to repair. The answer, frustratingly, is that enforcement generates immediate revenue while repairs require upfront expenditure. Let's talk about the inspection regimes that are being rolled out. Councils are now required to inspect pavements much more regularly and to document defects systematically. This sounds positive, but it's creating a paper trail that's coming back to haunt local authorities. Once a defect is recorded in the system, the council has a legal duty to repair it within a specified time frame, usually based on the severity of the defect. A deep crack or protruding paving stone might require action within 24 hours. A minor surface irregularity might allow 28 days. The problem is that councils are identifying thousands of defects but lack the resources to fix them all promptly. This is creating legal liability because once they've documented a hazard and failed to address it, they can't claim ignorance when someone gets injured. The insurance industry is playing a significant role in driving these changes as well. Council insurance premiums are skyrocketing due to the volume of pavement-related claims. Insurers are demanding that local authorities demonstrate active pavement management programs or face even higher premiums or loss of coverage entirely. This commercial pressure is forcing councils to act even when they'd prefer to maintain the status quo. Some councils are self-insuring now, setting aside millions in reserves specifically for pavement claims, but this money has to come from somewhere, usually other services or increased council tax. Now, let me address something that's particularly relevant for older residents and those receiving state pensions. The condition of pavements isn't just an inconvenience, it's a serious safety issue that disproportionately affects elderly people. Falls are one of the leading causes of injury and hospitalization among pensioners. A broken hip from tripping on an uneven pavement can be life-changing, leading to loss of independence, long-term care needs, and sadly, sometimes premature death. The NHS spends billions treating fall-related injuries every year. Councils are finally being held accountable for their contribution to this public health crisis. The legal framework underpinning all of this is the Highways Act, which places a duty on councils to maintain pavements in a safe condition. For decades, this was interpreted quite loosely. Councils would argue they were doing their best with limited resources, and courts were often sympathetic. That's changed dramatically. Recent case law has established that budget constraints are not a valid defense against failure to maintain highways. If a pavement is dangerous and the council knew or should have known about it, they're liable, regardless of whether they had the money to fix it. This legal reality is what's driving the "we must change" rhetoric. Accessibility legislation is another huge factor. The Equality Act requires that public spaces be accessible to people with disabilities. Pavements full of obstacles, without proper dropped curbs, or with surfaces that make wheelchair use difficult are potentially discriminatory. Disability rights organizations have become much more assertive in challenging councils, and they're winning. Courts are ordering councils to make expensive modifications to ensure compliance. This isn't optional anymore. It's a legal requirement with significant financial penalties for non-compliance. Let me give you some specific examples of changes you might see in your local area if you haven't already. Councils are installing continuous pavements at side road junctions, where the pavement level is maintained across the junction rather than dropping down to road level. This helps wheelchair users and people with pushchairs enormously. They're removing street clutter like unnecessary signs, posts, and bollards that reduce effective pavement width. They're enforcing strict rules on utility companies who dig up pavements, requiring perfect reinstatement and imposing hefty fines for substandard work. They're creating car-free zones in town centers, converting vehicle space into wider, safer pedestrian areas. The technology being deployed is quite sophisticated now. Some councils are using artificial intelligence-powered cameras mounted on vehicles to automatically scan pavements for defects as they drive around. The system can identify cracks, potholes, uneven surfaces, and obstructions, logging them all into a database with GPS coordinates and photographs. This creates an incredibly detailed record of pavement conditions but also generates an overwhelming workload for already stretched maintenance teams. Other councils are using apps that allow residents to report pavement problems directly, uploading photos and precise locations. While this improves reporting, it also increases the volume of recorded defects that the council is then legally obliged to address. Enforcement is becoming increasingly automated as well. In areas with pavement parking bans, councils are using CCTV cameras with automatic number plate recognition to issue fines without needing traffic wardens to be physically present. You might park on a pavement for just a few minutes while unloading shopping and 2 weeks later receive a penalty charge notice in the post with photographic evidence. There's no warning, no second chance, just an immediate fine that increases if you don't pay promptly. This is generating significant revenue for councils but also considerable resentment from residents who feel they're being treated like cash machines. The business community is particularly frustrated by some of the new rules. High street shops that have traditionally used pavements for displays, racks, and seating are being told to remove them or face daily fines. In some cases, businesses that have operated successfully for decades are suddenly becoming unviable because their entire business model depended on that pavement space. A greengrocer who displays fruit and vegetables outside, a florist who puts buckets of flowers on the pavement, a pub that sets up outdoor tables, all are being told these practices can no longer continue. The council's response is that while they understand the economic impact, pedestrian safety and accessibility must take priority. There's also a significant environmental angle to these changes. Councils are increasingly incorporating sustainable drainage into pavement redesigns. Traditional impermeable paving contributes to flooding by preventing rainwater from soaking into the ground. New permeable paving systems allow water to drain through, reducing flood risk and helping maintain groundwater levels. While environmentally positive, these systems are expensive to install and require specialist maintenance. Some councils are also planting more street trees, which improve air quality and provide shade, but tree roots can damage pavements, creating a new set of maintenance challenges. Community engagement around these changes has been mixed at best. Some councils have conducted extensive consultations, holding public meetings, and seeking resident input before implementing new pavement strategies. Others have simply announced the changes and started enforcement with minimal warning. This has created a sense of alienation in some communities, where residents feel things are being done to them rather than with them. The most successful implementations have been where councils have genuinely listened to local concerns and adapted their approaches accordingly, finding compromises that balance accessibility, safety, and community needs. Let me address the question many of you are probably asking. What does this mean for you personally? If you drive, be extremely careful about where you park. What was overlooked last year might result in a fine today. If your property has any structures, plants, or items that extend onto the pavement, check with your local council whether they comply with the new clearance requirements. If you run a business that uses pavement space, contact your council now to understand what's permitted and what isn't. If you're a pedestrian, particularly if you have mobility issues, you should actually see improvements over time, though the transition period might be messy. For those receiving state pensions or approaching retirement, these changes should ultimately make your daily life safer and easier. Better maintained pavements mean less risk of falls and injuries. Clearer, wider walkways mean easier navigation, especially if you use a walking frame or mobility scooter. Proper dropped curbs and tactile paving mean greater independence. Yes, there might be some short-term disruption as works are carried out, and yes, council tax might rise to pay for improvements, but the long-term benefits to your safety and quality of life should be substantial. The political dimension of this issue can't be ignored either. Pavement policy might seem like a mundane local matter, but it's becoming a significant political battleground. Some politicians are positioning themselves as champions of motorists, opposing pavement parking bans and arguing for pragmatism over rigid enforcement. Others are championing pedestrian rights, accessibility, and environmental concerns. National government policy is relevant too. The Department for Transport issues guidance that influences local decisions, and there's ongoing debate about whether pavement parking should be banned nationally across England and Wales, as it already is in Scotland. Looking ahead, the pace of change is only going to accelerate. The legal pressures aren't going away. If anything, they're intensifying. The demographic reality of an aging population means more people with mobility challenges who need safe, accessible pavements. Climate change means more extreme weather events that damage infrastructure and require resilient design solutions. The technology for monitoring and enforcement will become cheaper and more widespread. All of this points towards continued transformation of how pavements are managed. Some councils are exploring innovative funding models to pay for necessary improvements. Pavement improvement districts, similar to business improvement districts, where local businesses contribute to enhanced public realm. Section 106 agreements requiring property developers to contribute to pavement infrastructure. Partnerships with utility companies who benefit from working in well-maintained pavements. Government grants specifically for active travel and accessibility improvements. None of these fully solve the funding gap, but they help. There's also discussion about changing the fundamental legal framework. Some experts argue that the current system, where councils are simultaneously responsible for maintaining pavements and liable when they fail to do so, creates perverse incentives. Alternative models exist in other countries where highways maintenance is separated from local government, funded through dedicated taxation and managed by specialized agencies. Whether the UK will move in this direction remains to be seen, but the current system is clearly under severe strain. As we wrap up this deep dive into the shocking pavement rule updates sweeping the UK, I want to leave you with some final thoughts. Change is difficult, especially when it affects something as fundamental as the streets we walk on every day. It's easy to focus on the inconveniences, the fines, the restrictions, but step back for a moment and consider why these changes are happening. They're happening because too many people have been injured on defective pavements. Because wheelchair users have been excluded from full participation in public life. Because we've collectively underinvested in basic infrastructure for too long. The phrase, "we must change" from councils isn't an excuse. It's an acknowledgement of failure and a commitment, however reluctant, to do better. You have a voice in this process. Engage with your local council, attend consultation meetings, respond to surveys. Make your views known, whether you're concerned about parking restrictions, business impacts, or the need for better accessibility. The best outcomes will come from councils and communities working together, not from top-down imposition or bottom-up resistance, but from genuine dialogue and compromise. Stay informed about what's happening in your specific area. Council websites usually have information about pavement strategies and planned improvements. Sign up for local newsletters. Follow your councilors on social media. Knowledge is power, and understanding what changes are coming will help you prepare and adapt. If you're particularly concerned about certain issues, consider joining or forming a residents' association that can represent community views collectively. Thank you so much for watching UK State Pension with David. I'm David, and I hope this video has helped you understand the complex and rapidly evolving situation with pavement rules across the United Kingdom. These changes affect all of us, whether we're walking, driving, running businesses, or simply trying to navigate our communities safely. If you found this information valuable, please share it with family, friends, and neighbors who might benefit from knowing what's happening. The more people who understand these changes, the better we can all adapt to them. Leave your thoughts, experiences, and questions in the comments below. I'd love to hear how these new rules are affecting your local area and what you think about the changes. Your feedback helps shape future content on this channel. Until next time, stay informed, stay engaged, and remember that your voice matters in shaping the communities we all share. Thanks for watching.